Hey there everyone, this is Michael Dougal. You're going to learn about the side effects that may be associated with Wellbutrin use. I say may be associated with it because the fact is that you're going to respond differently to it than I have in the past, and I've used Wellbutrin over 10 years at this point, mostly on and off. I actually took a several-year break from using Wellbutrin, and many people see it as an antidepressant. I think that's most commonly why it's used, but also a weight loss aid. Also, it can potentially help with addiction if you're struggling for that, and so there's a lot of reasons why individuals will maybe want to use Wellbutrin, but one of the reasons that I actually started using it in the first place was because I was looking for something which could improve my mood, perhaps help with antidepressant without some of the side effects that may be associated with them. Now, did I necessarily need an antidepressant? That I'm not so sure about, but there was a time in which I did experiment with a few of them and I really disliked how they were making me feel. Most antidepressants make you feel very lethargic, they cause brain fog, and most importantly, they don't make you feel like yourself. And so when I had done some research into Wellbutrin not potentially having some of those side effects and not being your typical SSRI, which can induce weight gain, I was really excited about it. And I actually encouraged my GP to allow me to start using it. And I can say it was amazing for me. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. And I'm so thankful that I had discovered it. Though I also come across a lot of anecdotes about Wellbutrin and people mentioning that it causes them to be angry, it messes with their sleep, or it hurts their sexual function. And while I haven't experienced many of the side effects, there are some of the ones that I definitely have. So that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm also going to talk about the way in which I would use Wellbutrin now. Although at the time I'm shooting this video, I haven't been using Wellbutrin for over a month, and I think the month before that I only used it several times just to make sure that I was getting off of it properly. But before I get into the side effects, I really want you to know they weren't that bad. I'm somebody that responded pretty well to Wellbutrin. I kind of knew what it did for me, and it was very similar to most stimulants out there. Like when you ingest caffeine, you kind of know what to expect. You feel a bit more stimulated, but along with that comes with a bit of anxiety, or sometimes you'll feel like an energy crash at the end. So I've had a really good experience with Wellbutrin, though I do want to highlight some of the side effects. I've talked more about like the benefits of Wellbutrin and my experience in this video over here, though let's get into side effect number one, and that would be anxiety. And I don't really consider myself like a very anxious person in general, but I would notice like any sort of anxious tendencies would be magnified. And so if something bothered me, it would bother me more than usual. And I tended to overthink a lot more, or I would often like resort into what is the worst case scenario, which we know we shouldn't be doing, because if we look into the worst case scenario and we scare ourselves, that can obviously make us horribly uncomfortable. But now that I haven't used Wellbutrin for over a month, I do feel like if something negative is to happen, I don't start negatively question like the outcomes. I'm actually able to bounce back a lot faster, and I don't have that negative spiral of thoughts following it. And the way the anxiety hits you is pretty quick, though it does last throughout the day. And so whether you're using the XL form or the SR, you'll notice the anxiety kind of kick in immediately when you take it. Although the anxiety for me is tolerable, it makes me productive. Of course, I may not be as positive as a person because I'm taking action out of being an anxious and worrisome person. But overall, like at the end of the day, I look back feeling more productive, and then as a result being in a better mood, because that's just how I'm wired. When I'm doing more, when I'm more productive and giving value, I tend to often feel better. The second side effect experienced with Wellbutrin was irritability, and so everything would make me a bit more irritable than typically. Let's say if I'm fasted for a long time and I'm hungry, of course it's normal to be irritable, but the irritability you would experience with Wellbutrin is so much worse, and that can often make it really bad, especially if you're somebody that already has a short fuse. Kind of similar to methylphenidate or Concerta or Ritalin if you've used those, because I noticed like the irritability wouldn't hit me that fast after ingesting my Wellbutrin, although I often experienced it at the later portion of the day when typically you're just more like cognitively fatigued and tired. The third major side effect would be my heart rate always felt elevated, and I think just as a result of your heart rate being elevated, you're naturally more nervous, slightly more irritable, like you're a little bit on edge. And so with Wellbutrin, one of the things you really should understand is whether or not you should take the SR or you should take the XL form. The major difference between the SR and the XL is, of course, the SR hits you a lot faster, and that means that you're alert faster, but also within the first hour that you take it, your heart rate just feels uneasy. I remember I was walking around in a store and like my heart just jumped once, which kind of scared me a little bit. So that was the reason why I got off the SR and started using the XL. I think the SR probably like felt like it was getting out of my system faster, so that maybe felt okay several hours following ingestion. But with the XL, I like that it was just a bit more smoother, so I could ingest it. My heart rate didn't feel like it was doing funny things. I felt like I could still go to the gym, do my like high intensity interval training, do my weightlifting, and not have Wellbutrin mess with my exercise routine. I also enjoy doing things like sauna. I enjoy ice baths. I enjoy stretching myself, and I would never feel comfortable using the Wellbutrin SR with some of these typical practices that would elevate your heart rate. The next side effect, maybe benefit, would be weight loss. This is actually one of the things which intrigued me about Wellbutrin, because whereas most antidepressants are responsible for weight gain, or they would cause you to like crave carbohydrates, or they would compromise your workouts, because with Wellbutrin, I remember coming across a study where there was individuals that used it and actually experienced weight loss. So I was hoping that it would give me just that, because I was using Wellbutrin at a time when I really didn't want to exercise and my diet wasn't the best. And I noticed that not only did Wellbutrin help me to blunt my appetite, but also it had seemed that like my resting metabolic rate would be maybe 3 to 5% higher. So not that much higher, but it seemed like I was able to maintain a better physique when I was using Wellbutrin versus not. And after I stopped using Wellbutrin, I did kind of notice it was a bit easier for me to put on weight. Keeping in mind that Wellbutrin has stimulatory effects, meaning that you have more energy, you're more likely to like be on your feet or want to go out and do things when you're using Wellbutrin. Naturally, it's going to be easier for you to lose weight in the first place. So I'm not sure whether individuals would lose weight due to blunting appetite or increasing their metabolic rate. It may just be a little bit of both. Whereas in the past, I've used other things and they've made me crave like sugary foods or fatty foods, which of course we don't want. And then my major concern with Wellbutrin, and one of the reasons why I stopped using it, is the negative withdrawals that may be associated with it. And I think this can be compared to using other stimulants, even like caffeine, because what happens is what goes up must come down. And with Wellbutrin, this makes you stimulated, this makes you aroused, it slightly improves your mood. And so when you take time off of it, you're just more likely to feel a lack of energy, feel they're slower in your thinking, being not as sharp as your feet. And in the past, I used Concerta, which was amazing. It was such a strong stimulant though that when I took time off of Concerta, I felt horrible. And so that one experience kind of scared me a bit about using Wellbutrin long term. So within the past couple of years of using Wellbutrin, I had a practice in which I used Wellbutrin during the weekdays, but on the weekends, I wouldn't be using the Wellbutrin, just to make sure that I wasn't going to build somewhat of a tolerance to it, because I had already noticed that happening to some extent. And one of the things I definitely noticed during that, like you could say, short withdrawal period on the weekend, because I used it 5 days straight, was the following couple of days I felt more irritable, I felt anxious, I did feel slightly less energy, and boy, I felt angrier and had far less patience for people. So because of that, with Wellbutrin, not only would you want to pay attention to, okay, like how frequently are you taking it, but also when do you plan to take time off it, if you are going to choose to take time off of it, and how much would you be taking? Because I was on a dosage of 300 milligrams, then I actually dropped down to 150 milligrams per day, and then I used it 5 days on, 2 days off, and followed it in a practice like that where I knew that it would be easier for me to transition off Wellbutrin if I wanted to. I'm pleased to say I don't feel like it negatively affected my testosterone levels. I don't feel like it really changed anything for me when it came to building muscle in the gym, losing fat. So I often see individuals complain that Wellbutrin is decreasing their testosterone levels or hurting them in the weight room. For me, it made no difference whatsoever. Wellbutrin also did not mess with my sleep. Just make sure that you do take in the earlier portion of the day. I typically like waking up, taking my Wellbutrin 30 minutes afterwards, because you don't want to use a strong stimulant in the first thing in the morning, because that messes with your natural cortisol spike. So I've talked more about Wellbutrin on my channel. I have several videos talking about my experience, and who knows, I may use Wellbutrin in the future, because I feel like it's amazing for getting you back into momentum, back into a better mood where you're going to be focused, you're going to be productive, and sometimes that's all you need just to get yourself out of a bad patch. So I hope that you're taking good care of yourself. Make sure to subscribe if you did find the video informative. Share your thoughts about Wellbutrin in the comment section below, and if you want to chat with me one-on-one, you can do so over on Patreon, and be sure to visit our Discord server. We have a 24/7 chat room. We're having a whole lot of fun. I thank you for your support and look forward to seeing you next time.